Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Our guest today is Representative Jay Reedy, who represents the 74th District of Tennessee. He covers part of Henry County, all of Stewart, Benton, Houston, and Humphreys County. We're glad to have Jay here with us today. Appreciate you coming on the show, Jay.
Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
You've got some new constituents out there. You've been up in office a good while, but since the redistricting, you picked up Benton, part of Houston, and all of Stewart. So when did you first get elected? I've known you since you've been up there, but I can't remember how long that's been now.
It all took place in 2014 and just finished my 9th year. And of course, it was last year was the redistricting. And I had the western part of Montgomery County, which included Fort Campbell. So I had the Fort Campbell because it's in Tennessee. I had the voters, but of course, Fort Campbell has the post office.
Right.
So when I was told by the Secretary of State and the Comptroller's office that, Jay, it's grown so fast in Montgomery County, you're going to lose that. And the only thing is you can go west. And really, I had to pick up about 40,000 new constituents, and that's about half of what we represent. So it was right around 35,000, 40,000. So that's where I went from 3 counties to 5 counties that I represent. So with Benton County and Henry County, now I represent West Tennessee as well as Middle Tennessee.
A lot more driving in that way too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've known you since you've been up there. You've got a good, solid conservative voting record, especially on things like Second Amendment, 10th Amendment, and just conservative issues in general. And obviously, I'm not the only one that thinks that, because you recently were recognized by RestoreLiberty.org. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
RestoreLiberty.org. They're not in every state right now, but recently we had a citizen that moved to Tennessee from the state of Wyoming, and he became the state director and asked me about it last year before session started. So I had researched their website, and they are Restore Liberty. They want to protect the 10th Amendment rights of every citizen in every state. And of course, we know the heavy hand of the federal government. And as we continue, as I push legislation, the listeners, the viewers this evening will see some of the bills that I have put forward trying to protect the sovereignty of the state of Tennessee and doing just that. And after a little bit of conversation, then Restore Liberty, they came out and endorsed me. And the leadership there are, by and large, military veterans, a lieutenant colonel, a general, folks that's got some walking around sense, and they see what's happening at the federal level as well as what's being pushed on the state levels. So I'm honored to be recognized by those folks. But Dave, it's kind of like you and I, our age right now. We got to start standing up, because our kids, grandkids are going to lose all of that with this big push for socialism and communism and everything coming to the states, not only Tennessee, but the states around us.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, when I look, the first bill we're going to talk about, HB 0040, that had to do with foreign ownership of Tennessee land. And, it kind of reminds me of what the establishment always tries to say when they're trying to justify illegal immigration and amnesty and so on. Well, they're doing the jobs that Americans won't do. Well, the state is doing, and in this case, you were trying to do the job the federal government won't do.
That's right.
And so let's talk a little bit about that bill, if you can give us just a little quick overview of it.
Well, quickly, if you recall, a few years ago, I had a House Bill 2315, and of course, that was stopping sanctuary cities in the state of Tennessee. And of course, a lot of folks did not believe that we had sanctuary cities, as well as Governor Haslam, and he said it was a bill, it was a piece of legislation looking for a solution. And as soon as we passed that bill to stop that, we found out in Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, as well as Memphis, they were trying, those cities were trying to become sanctuary cities to protect criminal illegal aliens. So last year on House Bill 40, I started working on that, and it was a lot of work with the legal department at the state level. It's the legal department that we get to work with as legislators. And basically the bill was saying that if you, okay, so a person listening to this, going through the motions, the United States Treasury Department has a sanctions list. And so at any time, somebody could look at that sanctions list, and if that foreign entity, the foreign individual, if it's anybody that comes up on the United States Treasury sanctions list in the state of Tennessee, they cannot purchase any property, residential, commercial, agriculture, none of it. And the fiscal note was $80,000, and which is very small in comparison.
Right.
But the law as it was passed would allow, it kind of gave direction to the Secretary of State that he will set up a computer system, start registering foreign-owned property in the state of Tennessee. Then we can't go back in time. So if let's say somebody or Syria wanted to buy agriculture property, we can't take it away from them. But as the bill passed immediately July 1st, then they would have to fall or roll off of the sanctions list in order to purchase any real estate in the state of Tennessee. Now, let's say that we get somebody caught up in it, and the Secretary of State, he's not the police force in the situation. It's our state attorney general. So anybody breaking this law will be turned over to the Attorney General's office, and that's so it's got teeth in it, and it's got law enforcement in it. But also the beauty of it is later, probably next year, we can go back and find out exactly what countries currently own property in the state of Tennessee, because as soon as the computer system's put all together, registrations of foreign ownership of property will take place. But because the bill passed, let's say an African nation country, or maybe Syria, Libya, one of those countries, if they come off the sanctuary list, they can purchase property. But if they go back on, they've got to dissolve. They've got to sell that property. So, I think it's going to really help control that.
The sanctuaries list or the sanctions list?
Well, it's the sanctions list.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I said sanctuary. It has nothing to do with sanctuary. It's all sanctions.
Right.
But I'm trying to clear this in my mind so other folks can understand it. That, like you already said, the federal government's supposed to be protecting the sovereignty of all 50 states.
Yeah.
Well, we know what's going on the southern border with illegal aliens, drug trafficking, the warlords, all of those folks coming over our southern border. That's the federal government's job, and they're not doing it. Right. So unfortunately, we, the states, to protect our 10th Amendment sovereignty, yes, states' rights, we've got to start passing legislation to hold them accountable.
Absolutely. Now, doesn't it, on the sanctions list, are they on that sanctions list? Because I thought there was something in the bill that if you're not allowed to, if an American is not allowed to buy property in that country, they can't buy property in this country. Or was that maybe an earlier draft form of that legislation?
That was earlier draft. That was reciprocity, but we found that it become very difficult in that because it was like, who was going to keep, it would come with a huge fiscal note. Okay, so who's going to set up the computer system? Who's going to daily register who sells or not sells? And of course, that's where I reached out to the federal delegations, Senator Blackburn, Senator Haggerty, Mark Green, our congressman's office, as well as Congressman Kustoff, trying to figure out who already has a website up and running that tracks nefarious countries, citizens, military, just anything of foreign entity from the United States. Who could we quickly go to and maintain that? And that was the United States Treasury sanctions list was the best thing that we came up with. Certainly, I'm open to suggestions if somebody's got some idea how we can make it a better law. hey, let's talk.
Right. Well, did you have a lot of trouble getting it through as it was? I mean, was there a lot of pushback?
It was a lot of conversation. Now, the first pushback was the real estate agents, and really with the real estate agents is you come in as a property owner with somebody with a handful of money and they want to give it to you. They did the paperwork and they said, well, hey, we don't want to be the cops in the room. We don't want to be in trouble because we did the transaction between these two individuals. It ought to be between the buyer and the seller. And I said, okay, I get that. And then the Tennessee bar, the lawyers group came in and said, okay, we are drafting the paperwork. We don't think that we should be law enforcement in the room as well. So, and maybe you can see the challenges thereof. Uh, so that was written into the bill just to get them to go along with it as well, saying, no, you're not accountable for it. It's when they get caught by whomever and it's reported, that's where the Secretary of State, like I've already mentioned, will turn it over to the Attorney General's office.
Okay, and they get caught by, and how exactly are they going to get caught again, just to clarify?
Yeah, anybody could report it, but it's and reporting to the Secretary of State's
Okay,
office.
okay.
Now, there is another challenge, and there was the property assessor's day on the Hill, and I had some property assessors stop by my office, and they were interested in this bill too. And they said, we find, let's say it's some oil-rich companies come to Jay Reedy, and I've got a business and a business name, and I become the principal owner of this, but those foreign entities are making me flush with cash and they want me to go buy up every Airbnb, every vacation lot around Kentucky Lake, for an example. And you're trying to walk through the weeds, finding out who really owns this. Now, this is something that's for the viewers. This hasn't taken place. All it's been is a discussion. If this is going on in the state of Tennessee, we need to figure out how to stop that as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt that probably is going on. That is probably going on. Okay, so, but do you foresee taking another bite of that next year or the year after? Anything in particular on it that you want to try to make a little more stringent?
Yeah, right now I've got an open door policy, of course, at my office, telling people, and maybe it'll spark an interest just from this evening that folks will call my office, call me, or stop by the office and ask me to research some more. But currently, as with the property assessors, that's an ongoing conversation this summer. May not have anything legislative wise for this next year, but it's pretty amazing when you start to scratch an itch, how deep down the cause of that itch is. And that's what I'm here for.
Right, things start coming out of the woodwork, no doubt. So the next bill we want to talk a little bit is HJR 0038. That would be a constitutional amendment. It would address Section 26, which is essentially the Tennessee version of the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. But currently, the right to keep and bear arms also has the clause added to it that the state government, the legislature, can regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime and to clarify that citizens have a right to keep and bear arms for the defense. So now that one's going to take a while to get through. So this is the first session that it got through, correct?
Well, it's okay. Here's the situation. Me reading the Tennessee Constitution, that Article 1, Section 26 just struck a nerve. And so I started researching this back in 2018, saying, this isn't right. We need to change the way the Constitution reads in Tennessee, because giving the legislature the right to decide who can bear arms. Now, keep in mind, bearing arms is more than just a shotgun, a rifle. It could be a club, all of that when it was put back into the Constitution years ago. So it's interesting. I've got the whole, I could speak 30 minutes on that, the history of Tennessee, number one, and then who did we kind of plagiarize off of other constitutions to come up with the Tennessee Constitution. But it was the delegation that met in Knoxville about the way that the Constitution reads now. And the delegate just kind of threw what we read in our Constitution now that they have, the legislature's got the right to decide who will go be able to bear arms, and saying, you guys already do that. But of course, the Bruin case, everything else coming out of it. Okay, so what happens is you need a House resolution and a Senate resolution, an HJR and an SJR, to read the same. And in a legislative session, it needs to pass both houses. Then the next legislative session, in other words, it's going to take 4 years to get this done. And when it goes on the ballot is when the governor's name goes on the ballot for election or reelection. That's when we vote on these constitutional amendments. Okay, so that put me, I'm working with Senator John Stevens as going to be the Senate sponsor of it. And that's where I first filed the bill. And then I read the bill, read the history to the committee that was hearing the bill. And I still didn't feel comfortable, so I amended it. And that's where it was the citizens have the right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. And I like, wait a minute. And of course, visiting with Richard Archie on there, it said, it should be just for your defense. Forget about it being common or not.
Right.
And of course, common was strongly used, 1776, the founding of our country. What was common? What is the Second Amendment? How did it read? And that's where I had problems with that. So I took it off notice, massaged the idea a little bit, then we come back with just for their defense and started moving it through the committee system. Now, we got a lot of new people, and here was the challenge. I got it through all the committees and it sent right to the House floor. Well, come to find out that they were having a constitutional amendment calendar, and so I had to pull it and wait for all of these other constitutional amendments come on. And then when the shooting at Covenant took place, it seemed like everybody, if it had anything to do with firearms or whatever, the Senate took a bunch of bills off notice, going to pick it up next year.
Right.
I visited with Senator John Stevens. I said, we'll get the language right. My bill is stuck waiting to go through finance this next year. But I found out that both House and Senate could have the same resolutions the same year, pass it, and don't wait one, that I don't have to do one in the House and then do next year one in the Senate. We could do them both in the same year.
Right. So we're talking 2026 before it'll be on the ballot.
Right.
And we'll probably have a better
correct.
idea how this will fare after the August 21st special session is my guess.
Yeah. August 21st. Do you want to talk about red flag laws right now?
Yeah, let's go ahead, and then we'll come back to your other bills, but let's just go ahead and hear what your thoughts are, because I'm going to ask you anyway, so we'll go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had a slide asking about that or not, and I may need to take a quick pause and get a glass of water. Red flag laws. I've always opposed them. I have, what was it, several years ago, it was a Tennessee Firearms Association come out and it had legislators signing that they would oppose red flag laws. Did all that way back when. The I forget it, where all the states, all the counties, and then at the state level that you would be a Second Amendment
sanctuary city or
sanctuary state.
County, whatever. Yes.
Yeah, and so we got that done, but then the shooting has taken place. Then the governor's saying, well, we're going to have a special session August 21st. And then I'm thinking, okay, how many more months is left of this year anyway? And if we're waiting that long,
right,
let's have a better conversation come January when we get back into session. So what I have with me is the state's budget. And people keep talking about, well, it's firearms. No, it's mental health. And in mental health, after I looked at this document, there's 4 mental institutions across the state. There's the nonprofits. It's the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. And I can give you the facts, the figures, these institutes, how many people they're seeing every year, what it costs. But then finally, by the end of the day, we're spending nearly $500 million for mental health in the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
So if we're talking mental health, what are we doing right? what are we doing wrong? Where is this money going, and why are we not helping those folks with the mental health issues? And quickly, I will go through that. Community substance abuse services, 143 million. Community mental health services. These services are through a network of non-for-profit. Uh, let's see. Middle Tennessee Mental Health Institute, 207 beds. Started in 1853. 58, basically 59 million. Western Mental Health Institute, 150 beds, started in 1889. It's over in Bolivar, $42.5 million. Moccasin Bend Mental Health, that's in Chattanooga, started in 1961, 165 beds, $45.5 million there. Memphis Mental Health Institute, 55 beds. That's over $21.5 million there. Tennessee Opioid Abatement Council, that's really winding down. And let's see, major maintenance through the whole, it's $554 million
Wow.
spent mental health and substance abuse. So if we're going into special session, guess what Jay Reedy is going to be talking about? Where's this money? What are we doing?
Absolutely.
And what do we need to do better with the taxpayers' funds?
Well, who should be monitoring that right now? Isn't there somebody that should be monitoring the bang for the buck we're getting for those programs already?
Well, you would think, and that's where being on Government Operations Committee, that would be the commissioner of that department. That's where my questions are going to be. And I spoke to her in passing, and I said, "Are you going to be there for the special session?" She said, "Yes." And it's like, okay, I'm gathering my ammunition to ask those questions.
Good, good. And one thing I do wonder about, we always hear mental health. And I don't doubt that there's a lot of disturbed people out there. We know there's a lot of people out there that are addicted to drugs and alcohol and so on and so forth. But, you got to wonder how much of this is just an issue of moral health versus mental health. It seems like we want to categorize everything as a mental issue, as if to deny that, a lot of these problems are just moral problems. And I don't know how to quantify all that, but I understand there's mental health, but I don't think we should let everything be covered with that. A lot of it's just flat out moral health or evil is the way I see it.
Meanness. That's right. And of course I always refer to, sometimes I catch myself preaching to folks, but it's in the book of Job, the first book of Job. That's where God asked Satan, "Where you been? What you been doing?" Just kind of not going to verbatim quote the Bible, but Satan says, "Well, I've been back and forth upon the earth." And we know what he was doing in the book of Job, and of course looking for whom he could devour. And of course with Jesus Christ coming in the New Testament talking about Satan and his demons, we know it was the casting out of the evil spirits in the time of Christ. But we got to think about it. Satan is still on this earth with us, and his demons. And of course, when Jesus Christ ascended into heaven, we've got the Holy Ghost protecting us, but we've got to, in prayer, in word, in deeds, how we live our lives, to get help from the Holy Spirit. But you're right when you start talking about, and that's where I talked to quite a few folks. Okay, so it's not a mental health sickness. It's a lot of these folks. They're wrapped up in their minds, and you know it, I know it. It's some of our military men and women. We ask, or they have to do something or see something, and sometimes they need a psychologist to get their minds straightened back out. PTSD. It's all terrible stuff. But when we start talking about somebody watching violent video games, they never have been. No leadership. Maybe it's a lack of a father in a family nucleus.
Yep.
But when those folks finally come up and somebody makes them mad, all they can think about, and it's not only guns. Since those murders at Covenant School, there have been folks killed by knives, hatchets, moving vans, and automobiles. It's like, come on, it's not how they were killed. It was the motive was behind
Yep.
the evil person behind the action. So it's like, come on, folks, we've got to dig deeper. And of course, I've had conversations with leadership in the House and saying, okay, no state has got this figured out to stop gun violence. What makes Tennessee think that we can figure it out in a 3 or 4 day period with a special session? It's like, we've got an issue. And until we finally get back to maybe, it's like you said, we got to run for moral high ground and start teaching people.
Yep.
You don't take your anger out by killing people.
Absolutely.
It's a huge issue. I don't have the answer. I guess I can just complain about it like everybody else.
Well, I don't think mental health is the answer, and I certainly don't think, or it's a whole answer, and I certainly don't think red flag laws and violating our Constitution is the answer by any means.
Absolutely not. It's crazy to even think about it. I've been in meetings with sheriff, police chief, and for the city of Aaron, and he said, the gun's an inanimate object. It's just sitting there. Yeah. So thinking that we as a state need to take away everybody's firearms because they might do something evil, that's not where we need to go. So it's our rural counties. They're sticking to the Bible and to their guns. I'm sorry for the folks in the big cities that think we've got to, in order to be a safer state, we need more laws and less freedom.
Maybe we have to build walls around the cities. Just throwing that out there. No, only kidding a little bit. Next one I want to go to, and this might seem like a little dry topic, but I see a good reason for this, and I'm going to let you fill in the blanks, and that's HB 0394 that had to do with in-state meat inspections, versus USDA being the only game.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes as well, trying to stay on track. Okay, so love it or hate it, COVID happened. And when COVID happened, who's in charge of the big four slaughterhouses?
USDA.
And of course, that's the federal government.
Yep.
One person on that ship come down with COVID. They sent everybody home. They stopped slaughtering the livestock, the meat protein that we were getting from the poultry houses to the pork houses to the beef houses, all of that. And not only that, when you took 700 animals that day and you put them in one vat, ground them up for hamburger, then you have an outbreak of salmonella, and they've got to throw all of that away. And they're inspected. They're inspected by veterinarians saying, okay, our food source is safe. Now, I drilled a USDA inspector in let's see, it was a few years ago with Andy Holt was still in the House. And I said, our USDA inspected slaughterhouses, we can't, at the time, my wife had some slaughter hogs that needed to be processed. Well, they had to be fed for another month before we could take them. And I told that to this guy that was testifying. He said, well, it doesn't cost anything extra. And I said, oh, what? We have a money tree or money grows under a rock that pays you guys a salary to inspect these slaughterhouses? Well, you're right. It does cost us to be there. And I said, food insecurity is a big problem across the state of Tennessee and our nation. Now, what this bill is doing, and since Governor Lee came in, it was what we call the Prime Act. And we're going to say we've got to follow the inspection process for USDA at the federal inspection houses, but we will take our own slaughterhouses in the state of Tennessee for intrastate only. We can't sell interstate. We can't sell across state lines. So if we started the passage of this bill, it's in the Commissioner of Agriculture's hands now. And what we're going to do is work with USDA, set it up so we can start inspecting ourselves in the state of Tennessee. And if COVID ever happens or something like that, again, we're not shutting down all the slaughterhouses across Tennessee. We're going to keep these small mom and pop slaughterhouses open. And especially when they're in your backyard, you don't have to travel 300-400 miles to get your animal harvested and packaged for you. Now, the current law in the state of Tennessee, Dave, if I've got some prime beef that I grow on my farm. Now with that, you could buy one or you could buy half. And then you would say, Jay, I want it taken to whatever slaughterhouse next to you, wherever you live. Okay. So I take it there. At that time, I lose possession of that animal and it becomes yours. So that slaughterhouse will call Dave Vance and said, okay, I see you're getting half of this animal. How do you want it cut up? Do you want it all hamburger? Do you want it for a family of 2, a family of 4? And then you go pick it up. You pay me for that half on an agreed price and you're done. Well, what this bill will do in the end is allow me, you've got a church function, you want 300 pounds of hamburger. Well, I can sell you 300 pounds of hamburger, or maybe you want all fillets, or maybe all, I don't know, just name a piece of beef that you want. I could sell you those individual cuts without you having to buy the whole animal. Now, a big push that we understand now, do you have a freezer big enough to hold 500 pounds of meat, or a freezer big enough to hold 250 pounds of meat? Maybe you just got the little freezer on your refrigerator and you're sick and tired of going to the big box stores or wherever paying 3 prices for that cut. And a lot of folks, as a cattle farmer, they look at that and say, my gosh, you guys ought to be rich. It's like, no, we get paid the pennies. Yeah. The middleman gets paid the dollars at the grocery store. And then that's the price that you're seeing. And once again, you've got plant protein or you've got animal protein, and it's. I love a steak and a burger just as well as the next guy. I don't think I could ever be just a vegetarian, but that's what this bill's going to do. And there's currently 31 other states doing it or trying to get it done because they saw the chaos and the nonsense from the big packers making all the money. And matter of fact, your cows get so old that you take them to the sale yard and you know they're just going to be made hamburger. So the buyers show up, buy all these old cows, ship them to Kansas to a big packer house, grinds them up for hamburgers and bring them back to your meat counter at the Piggly Wiggly or wherever. And it's like, oh my gosh, that cut me out of just slaughtering that cow locally and selling it to the grocery store, that it had to go through these multiple hands. And it made somebody some money, but not me.
Anything that reduces our reliance on the federal government is a good thing, in my opinion. Anything, and especially food. Like you said, food security is an issue, and we can't rely on the federal government to do the things they're supposed to do. So why should we rely on them to do things like that they shouldn't even be involved with? So that's a good bill, and I'm glad to see that get through. There's another one here that House Bill 892. Which is report school assaults, a requirement to report school assaults. Now, we know schools are pretty dangerous places anymore, no matter where you're at, and we know that teachers get assaulted. So is there a problem with those assaults not getting reported? Can you explain that a little bit?
You know, I have been working on this ever since I got into office, and it's interesting what teachers will tell you that they have problems with in the educational system. But when you take and ask them to come testify on Capitol Hill in Nashville, Tennessee, they freeze up because they're afraid of losing their job. Okay. And so last year I had a bill with a Senate sponsor. I won't name his name, but it was holding these young people who sexually violate teachers in the classroom, in the hallways. They punch them. Well, the one lady that got shot by what was he, a 5-year-old?
Yeah, 5 or 6,
she ended up quitting. Yeah. And so she's no longer a teacher. She said, I cannot live in this environment because the school district's not doing anything, and she's suing the school district. Okay. So these teachers that are being violated. So it was last year, it was with Fox News. I had 3 teachers come up. They blurred out their voice, their faces, and they testified. And it was just horrific that I'll give you one example. So it was getting ready to graduate. It was this black man, basically young man, sexually violated this teacher and hurt her.
At the school?
She was at a school, and she went home for a week, come back, and he was put in the classroom right next to hers with a different teacher, and him and his friends and when she would walk out in the hallway, get taunted by them. And she went to the principal and said, "Why wasn't this reported?" And said, "Well, we couldn't do that because we were afraid of Black Lives Matter." And I said, "You've got to be kidding me. Forget about who might be coming after you." All right, so that's what this bill was saying. Not only the principal will report it to law enforcement, but the director of schools is where it's got to be reported at too. So we're creating a chain. Now, a big thing is, oh, well, we can't expel that student because there will be a learning loss. I said, baloney, that child can learn virtually or from, the name escapes me, where each school district has a place where you send kids that are abusive, interruptive in classrooms and all of that.
Alternative
Okay,
schools,
you're going to get
in-house.
alternative school. There you go.
Yeah.
So there's the alternative school choice as well out there that we have got to start. We expect a teacher in the classroom to teach all 25 kids. Let's say that there's 25. If there's one child in there that's a bully and disruptive the whole time that day, how many kids learned nothing? The other 24. So we've got to give the leadership back to the teachers in the classroom. And if they've got a child they cannot handle, there needs to be an avenue to get them out before they violate the teacher or other students.
What's the penalty for a principal and or director that does not comply?
I'm not ready for that question.
Sorry.
I know so many things to talk about. I'd have to research that, Dave. I'm sorry. I know part of the bill also said if that teacher was hurt, that school district had to pay for all the medical bills of that teacher. And I remember that part of it. But as far as the punishment of the principal of the school or the director for not reporting it, it escapes me.
Yeah, because they had to be punished. And something else you said was that they didn't want to lose a student. And I think a lot of that is tied to money because it's all, they get paid by the head. And I've had teachers tell me that disruptive, maybe not to that degree, maybe not violent sexual assaults, but the disruptive kids that the district and or the principal, they don't want to put them out of school because if they're suspended for any length of time, they lose funding.
Well, that whole system, if you recall, my second term in office, my wife's a school teacher. I said, "Hey, I'll tell you what I did." I said, "I asked to be on the education committee." My wife said, "You're crazy." And of course, my 2 years serving on the education committee, Andy Holt was with me at the same time, and we just shook our head. It's like, there's not enough money that we can give the Department of Education that would make them happy. And of course, all of the craziness of the public education system. Now, with that, I need to say there's no perfect public school system.
Right.
There's no perfect charter school system. There's no perfect private school. And certainly there's parents out there that are homeschooling their kids that have no business homeschooling their kids.
Right.
And some of these folks that homeschool, and I got to give it to them, they reach out and it's online. There are teachers and that child is sitting in front of a computer learning. But this day and age, we say, well, that's not a good idea. But look at the failures we're having in the public school system, and the kids are in the classroom failing miserably. And there's all avenues to teach publicly. And of course, the education savings account, we expanded that to include Chattanooga. So it's Knoxville, no, it's not Knoxville. It's Nashville, Memphis, and Chattanooga now. And we're still, this next year, we will find out the results with an education savings account. Is it going to pay off? Do we get a better educated child? But most states are moving to a statewide voucher program saying, okay, we're going to give the parents, the student, a right to decide where they want to go get their education, and not just from a public school system that is close by that is constantly a failing school district.
I do have one question on that. So in rural districts like yours, You
Right.
know, with the exception of Henry County and Paris per se, where, you know, if I were going to get a voucher, if I had a kid in Stewart County, you'd have to pretty much go to Clarksville. And some people do that, don't get me wrong, but I'm just curious, is there something in the works for the rural districts that would help facilitate that? State money only, I'm not talking anything federal, but state money only that would help facilitate setting up these alternatives.
Well, I know in Houston County, there's a Christian school here in Houston County. Now, that is the challenge that we found with the education savings account with Memphis and with Nashville. All of those other schools that your child could go to, they were filled to capacity and there's a waiting list. So there wasn't enough. And so the Senator Gardenhire and the state reps out of Chattanooga, they had a lot of openings, and that's where the legislative body decided to add them to the list, saying, okay, there's other opportunities, and there was monies already earmarked that was not being used currently because kids couldn't get into a classroom in Davidson County or Shelby County. So, but we're on a trend across our country that it should be left up to the student and the parents to decide where their kids need to get an education, especially, you know, Nashville's got 20 failing school districts. Memphis has got 24 failing school districts that have been failing for over 20 years. And it's like, okay, leadership is top down. It's not bottom up. Right. And if leadership's not going to turn this around, maybe they should lose their students. And if they can't stay open because they lost all the students to a better some better education system across the road, so be it. But it's kind of like capitalism. It's me and my business. If I don't take care of my customers, they'll find somebody else to go do business with, and then I'm out of business.
Yep. Good point. Last bill that I want to talk about, well, it's actually last bill that you sponsored that I want to talk about was House Bill 0510, and basically use of deadly force to protect personal property in certain situations. And you know, I think people will be surprised to understand that here in Tennessee, that we don't necessarily have as many rights to protect our property as they may have assumed. So I'll let you talk about the bill a little bit, why it was needed. Unfortunately, it did not pass, and we can talk about that as well.
Well, it was 2 years ago. It was House Bill 10. And of course, the challenge is trying to find Senate sponsor. But I had a friend out of Montgomery County, was a lawyer, and actually is a judge now. And he brought it to me. He said, you know, Texas, you are a tenant on your property. If somebody's coming up there, burning down your haystack, stealing your tractor, whatever, you could use up to deadly force to stop that person from doing it. I said, oh, really? So I talked to legal and I said, okay, draft me up a piece of legislation. And of course, when I filed the bill and it was on notice statewide, the only people that protested it was NAACP out of Memphis. They wanted to meet with me and said, this is not a good bill. And I said, what, you don't have the right to protect your property? So when I filed the bill, I got a lot of phone calls from other people, and I said, this is already state law. And I said, oh, no, it's not. On my farm, somebody could show up and be taking a baseball bat to the car windows, to everything else. It's until they threaten me and threaten my life of me or my family members is the only time I can use deadly force. So in other words, I would just have to call the sheriff or the police department saying, hey, I got this guy destroying my property. Can you come arrest him? Nuts. Nuts. That's crazy. Why would we allow somebody to do that? And I've had a lot of high dollar making professionals, when I tell them that, said, well, I don't care what state law is, I'm shooting somebody. And it's like, well, that's a point, you know, but you're breaking the law. And they said, well, that is not right. So that 2 years ago, that failed, couldn't get a Senate sponsor. And then this bill that just flashed on the screen, I put it on notice. But as you know, when you go before a committee, you try to work the committee to get the votes, and the votes are not there. And it's just, and like you said, it just failed. And that's what the bill is doing. Now, a second part of that bill, too, is the man, the woman in St. Louis when they
Right.
stepped out on their yard with their firearms, and that's called brandishing a weapon.
Yes.
And if I go up to your house and I'm going to do something with a baseball bat, or I'm going to cuss you out, and you stand there with a weapon, and I, the protester, feel threatened, you could send the homeowner, the rancher, the farmer to jail for threatening your life. And it's like, well, that's nuts. Why can't you step out on your front porch, rack a shotgun, said
Yep.
leave, and threaten people? But you can't in the state of Tennessee. If you threaten with a firearm, you become a felon. And that was the other half of the bill, saying that's nuts too. It just previous lawmakers and what they have done to the Tennessee Code annotated, and not only that, it's the Tennessee Constitution, and that's why we got to keep coming back every year.
Yep.
Try to massage the idea and get the willing minds, if you can convince them. And of course, it's just trying to be a good salesman, saying this is the way our liberties and freedoms, where they come from, and here's how we're going to protect. And it's like all of the protesting. You remember the special session we had in Nashville a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And BLM Antifa was going around burning up private businesses, private businesses, mom and pop that's been in business for 4 generations, burned up and lost. And finally, because the district attorney there in Nashville would not prosecute, matter of fact, that's why we got one of those knuckleheads that is a House member now, or just running it for re-election again because we expelled him. He would have a rap sheet as long as your arm, but because the district attorney would not prosecute in Nashville, he has no record. Therefore, he could run for office, and he succeeded. And chances are he's going to succeed again, and we're still going to have to put up with him. But that's showing you, that's showing me, and the rest of the state of Tennessee, the nation, that we've got liberal judges, liberal district attorneys that will not stand up to their constitutional duties, which I take the oath to protect our Constitution, both federal and state Constitution. And when these other elected officials do not do that, then we see the chaos that we have to live up, around us. Some folks love to go to Nashville, but because of no law enforcement, they don't want to go anymore. And I get that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't blame them. And I'm glad you mentioned about the brandishing of the weapon, because I guarantee you most people in Tennessee don't know that. I'm sure they assumed that if somebody was on their property, came there and threatening to destroy property, threatening to kill one of their animals or whatever, I'm sure they thought they could come out there and, pump the shotgun and take care of it. But no, you can't. And so we've got a lot. Tennessee, it's hard to believe that a state like Tennessee has these New York type rules. It's really an embarrassment, right, to be honest with you. So hopefully that one will get through next year. I know you're going to bring it back, but that one definitely needs to get through, in my opinion, to make us safe. That's especially, the government is failing us at so many levels. The federal government, the state government in many ways, and they don't even want to change things so that we can protect ourselves. And now, of course, we have a red flag law that, if Bill Lee gets his way, will even leave us more in danger.
And Dave, that's the challenge that since I've been in office. It's sometimes legislation takes 4 to 6 years to get passed.
Yep.
And then it depends on the makeup of the Senate or the House. Now, this is purely my opinion, but when I first come in, we needed some help in the House.
Yep.
We had some state representatives that were more liberal than conservative, and then we've got a good conservative group coming back on now. But then we find the problem is in the Senate, and it's like, oh, okay. And so I could work on a bill for 6 years and pass it every year in the House, but until you change the hearts and minds in the Senate, and of course, sometimes you got to pay attention to who your Senate sponsor is and get a good one that'll stick to his guns, that'll have a phone conversation with you quite a bit. Help me understand your motive for this bill, how to pass this bill. And of course, that was House Bill 40 with Senator Nicely. I've been on the phone with him several times. Matter of fact, that meat bill, I had that bill with Senator Nicely as well. So, but I'd even show up in Senate hearing rooms and sit in the audience. So if that senator had a hiccup call on me. I'll come up front and testify, and I'll give you all the ins and outs of what this legislation is going to do. And you know, I try to stay away from the warm and fluffy, the feel good pieces of legislation. If I'm carrying something, it's going to be controversial. It's going to make a big difference at the end of the day, if and when it passes.
And I want to ask you something, and I don't expect you to name names, but do you think out of the 20-some, close to 30-some Republican senators that we have, forget the Democrats, do you think we have more than, and this is being generous, 10 that you could rely on for conservative issues? Yeah, I didn't think so. I'm counting about 7, and that depends on the day and the issue.
I'm up to 4 right now, so it's like, okay. So part of that is leadership. It's just like leadership in the House. I knock heads with everybody, you know, from lobbyists to leadership. And if I don't believe something, I'm going to share that. You know, that's what this world needs more now is speak your mind. I had a boss years ago who said, "Hey, it's Reedy. Thing about I like about you is just whatever's on your mind, you just speak it." And I said, we need to all be open books. Don't candy coat stuff. Just you like it, you hate it, and maybe the reason why. Now, with that, that's a challenge as a state representative. You get a lot of folks complaining about something for or against, and if they don't like it, then okay, tell me how to change it. What's the solution? Where do you think we need to go? And so let's stop complaining all the time, but try to help fix it. It's come up with a solution. There's got to be a solution out there. And once again, as far as this red flag law, it's August 21st. We got 4 more months before we're back into session. I think we could hit the pause button, have a lengthy conversation come January about this whole conversation, because we in the state of Tennessee are not the Lone Rangers. Everyone across the whole country has got a problem with people murdering other people. And of course, it's in the Bible, thou shalt not murder. Come on. I mean, if we'd stop lying, cheating, stealing, and coveting another man's wife, this world would be a better place.
Absolutely. Another thing about the special session, you know, they talk, the governor especially likes to say, well, this is about public safety. Yet he's going to create a public safety hazard by having this in August instead of waiting to have it in January during a regular session. So, that's something that is just unconscionable.
Right. Across the nation, could you tell me that one state that is still in session? None.
Right.
None. So all of the protesters, of course, as a young man, I was stationed in Germany. 1st to 41st, we had the intermediate nuclear weapons. It was the Pershing 1 Alphas. Then later we transferred those to the German army. Then we got the Pershing 2s. Every weekend, every holiday, there were protesters from around the world protesting nuclear weapons. Yep. All right. So in the state of Tennessee, a special session, nothing else is going on. All the protesters in all the other states, guess where they're going to be?
Absolutely.
On August 21st.
Yep.
They will be in Nashville, Tennessee. You won't be able to even walk around Nashville from so many folks being there. And leadership's got to understand that that's going to put me and all Tennesseans in an unsafe environment for a week. And we shouldn't do that.
Courtesy of Bill Lee. We are at risk courtesy of Bill Lee.
And I understand when friends get hurt or killed, the emotions run high, but sometimes common sense needs to prevail. But, we put a lot of money in the budget for safety in the schools, more state troopers being hired, safety on the roads, safety across the states, SROs in all the schools. Just how much money are we going to spend on safety, and then how are we going to evaluate, was it money well spent?
Absolutely.
Because I think we should leave it up to the individual schools. I mean, I got an email from somebody saying, we need to pass in our budgets money and give it to all of the churches to protect themselves. It's like, oh, really? Some of the crazy things that I get, it's maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but safety should be taken care of by those individual churches, and with video cameras. And it's like what happened down at that Church of Christ in Texas when the guy was trying to pull a shotgun out, and there were several members that were armed, and the one professional guy just took him out with one shot.
Praise the Lord.
That's what protection ought to look. Yep.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammo.
That's exactly.
Last thing, thank you for what you do, and you are a supporter of the 10th Amendment. We talked about the 10th Amendment exclusively last week when we had Representative Halsey on there, and I mentioned that there's a new organization that I'm the co-founder, and the founder is Karen Bracken in East Tennessee, and the organization is Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty. And we have a website, and I'm proud to say that Jay has signed on as one of our legislative team members, along with Clay Doggett. We had him sign up earlier today. We have Bud Halsey, and on the Senate side, we have Senator Janice Bolin. We'll be talking to other people, but guys, the 10th is where it's at. DC will never fix DC. The only way to fix DC is with the states interceding. So we need divine intervention and state intervention. So the website is tncss.weebly.com, and the main way we communicate is not the website, but it's a Substack actually. It's tncss.substack.com, and you can get the Substack link on the website. But that's going to be our main way of communicating. We'd like to have as many people sign up on that as possible. The more numbers we have, the more clout we have with the legislators. Doesn't cost you anything. We're not going to ask for donations. Our goal is to get the legislation passed that will create processes for nullification and to monitor all the situations that arise under the 10th Amendment, whether it's in the future, current, or it's been existing for a while. We can't fix it overnight. We're not going to be able to go cold turkey, but we have to do something. Right now, we are tethered to the Titanic, and we need to fix that. Jay, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate the legislation that you pushed all these years, and look forward to working with you in the future, and hope to have you back on.
I appreciate the opportunity, Dave. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Like us on Facebook, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.